How's it going, everyone? I am the Shaz here with the admittedly long overdue card analysis video for the initial run of Nijigasaki FES URs. Yes, I know we're already on the second season of FES URs in general, but I feel like this information will be beneficial to a lot of newer players and players that maybe started off casually but want to take that next step into becoming a competitive Voltage player. We have 10 total cards to go over, so let's not waste any time and get right into it. First Niji FES UR that was released was Tentation Bleu Karin, a cool attribute SP type. At Limit Break 0, Karin starts off with 7435 base appeal, 3306 base stamina, and 5776 base technique. Her tap active is the SP Gauge Bomb, adding 31% of this card's appeal to the next SP gauge at skill level 3. Her passive is admittedly on the weaker side, giving cards in her strategy a technique buff of 6% at skill level 3. Her LSA is decent, stating that whenever you clear an appeal chance, you have a 30% chance to refill your SP gauge by 10% of this card's appeal. This card, until the release of Party Dia, held the crown as being the card in the cool attribute with the highest base appeal before passives. At Max Limit Break, however, this card still has the highest base appeal for all cool cards pre-passives. For a lot of players, this card does give you a pretty good scoring option in the attribute, but because of her tap active and passive, don't really see much in the game's current Voltage meta, which heavily favors strong Voltage types and SP type SP gauge fillers. If you're a budget or free-to-play player having difficulties with a song like Sweet Eyes Advanced Plus difficulty, this card can really help out quite a bit. A decent card, but not one I'd consider investing a large chunk of Radiance or School Idol wishes in. The second Niji FES UR released was the polarizing Scarlet Courage Setsuna, the active attribute Voltage type card. At Limit Break 0, Setsuna starts with 7759 base appeal, 3306 base stamina, and 5451 base technique. Her tap active is the Voltage boost, providing 36% of her appeal as Voltage at skill level 3. Her passive is the best for frontline scoring, giving a 6% appeal buff to cards in her strategy at skill level 3. Her live show active is the weakest part of her kit, as whenever you switch strategies, this card has a 30% chance to give 10% of this card's appeal as Voltage. Setsuna. What's to say that already hasn't been said about this card? The best scorer in the game until FES Kanan came out, this card may be considered the single greatest killer of the global All-Stars player base, as a lot of players who rolled for her on the FES banner after consulting JP server players simply quit after not pulling this card. There are still some people who don't understand why this card was so highly sought after, so I'll break it down for you. This card has the third highest base appeal in the game currently and has one of the best combinations of abilities for scoring. Save for a couple of transitional cards, FES Kanata and Initial Kanan, the best frontline scorers have the same strategy appeal buffing passive. The active attribute has no shortage of this, as Initial Ruby, Blue Amor Umi, Knight of the Rose Shizuku, Sparkling Night Parade Kanata, Signs of Spring Rin, First FES Kanan, Second FES Ellie, and the Second FES Riko all have this passive. Combined with that sky-high appeal and backline cards that can boost her, this card can consistently tap for 50k Voltage or more, making for a near-perfect all-around scoring option, even on songs that feature a non-cleansable appeal debuff. The third Niji FES UR released was Delightful Waltz Emma, a natural attribute SP type card. At Limit Break 0, Emma starts off with 5289 base appeal, 3306 base stamina, just like the previous two Niji FES URs, and a whopping 7934 base technique, which upon release was good for a game-high 38.8% crit rate. Her tap active is the SP Gauge Fill, filling the gauge for 8% at skill level 3. Her passive is on the weaker side, giving a technique buff of 3.6% to all cards in the formation at skill level 3. Her LSA is one that we haven't seen before, and honestly I don't think we'll see again, as upon strategy switch, has a 40% chance to add 600 to your SP gauge, or a 10% gauge fill if you're playing an advanced difficulty song. Until First Fest Nozomi's release, this card held the crown of highest technique at Max Limit Break, topping out at 14,198 pre-passives, which equates out to a roughly 57% crit rate. This card is still relevant today, as the most common strategy among voltage competitors in the natural attribute uses FES Emma, Second FES Ruby, and Valentine's Day Honoka. This card is also used by some of these same whales to cheat out extra SP gauges at the beginning and end of songs. Global server voltage guru Nematic employs this card as much as he can for those reasons. For the rest of us mere mortals, however, you can be perfectly fine not investing any additional radiance into this card if you don't have FES Nozomi, Valentine's Day Honoka, or Second FES Ruby. Even at Limit Break 0, this card is perfect for SP gauge title hunting during SBL, so try to tile this card as soon as you get it. The next Niji Fesuar was Angel's Lullaby Kanata, an elegant attribute voltage type. At Limit Break 0, Kanata starts off with 7098 base appeal, 2969 base stamina, and 6437 base technique. Her tap active is very restrictive, giving a 6.6% appeal buff to other third years for the next 5 notes at skill level 3. Where Kanata shines though is in her passive and live show active. Her passive is one of the best for backline support cards, giving a 3.6% appeal buff to all cards at skill level 3. Her live show active is also an appeal booster, giving you a 30% chance at the start of an AC to increase the base appeal of all cards by 5% for the remainder of the live, though this ability can only be activated once per live. This is now 3 Niji Fest cards in a row that still has meta relevance, though Kanata's is strictly as a backline appeal booster. The combination of her passive, live show active, and her 4 total insight slots means that if she has 4 medium group insights and her live show active goes off in the first appeal chance, she will be providing a 17.2% appeal buff to all other cards, which is absolutely bonkers. Her usability as a frontline scorer is pretty limited, as she only really pairs well with other third years. Players could opt for strategies that pair her with cards like Halloween Mari and Initial Daya, but those strategies will score less in the long run than the dominant elegant attribute strategy, which right now features First Fest Ellie, Initial Yohane, and Kanata's party card. Even knowing that, however, I'd still be perfectly fine investing both Radiance and Insight pins into this card, as she'll be useful to even the most casual players for a very, very long time. The next card released 2 full Fest banners after Kanata was Heartbeat Schoolgirl Ai, who came as a cool attribute voltage type card. At Limit Break 0, Ai starts off with 7392 base appeal, 3519 base stamina, and 5883 base technique. Her tap active is the voltage gain, providing all cards with a voltage increase of 6.6% for the next 5 notes at skill level 3. Her passive provides some flexibility, giving a 4.6% base appeal boost to all other cool attribute cards at skill level 3. Her LSA is pretty unique, giving a 50% chance to increase the appeal of cool attribute cards for the next 5 notes after you clear an appeal chance. While this card is technically one of the strongest cool attribute scorers, trailing only Fest Canon in terms of base appeal at Max Limit Break, it's in a really awkward spot when it comes to the meta. Cool attribute songs have so many different possible scoring strategies that are viable that it is solely based on which song you're playing. Some songs could need a frontline with her, and for some songs she can be used as a backliner because of her useful passive and live show actives. If you're not really concerned with meta chasing and just want a top-notch cool attribute scorer, this is a very good card to own. The next card released was Blooming Garden Shizuku, a cool attribute guard type. At Limit Break 0, Shizuku starts off with 3762 base appeal, 8208 stamina, and 5130 base technique. Her tap active provides a stamina shield equal to 34% of her stamina at skill level 3. Her passive is weak for a sustain card, boosting stamina of other cool cards by 4.6% at skill level 3. Her LSA doesn't really match her typing or kit very well, as it provides a 3.5% appeal boost to all cards for the next 5 notes after you complete an appeal chance. The viability of this card has remained pretty stagnant since its release. While it does provide a very large boost to your overall stamina pool, she doesn't really provide a lot in the way of scoring like First FES Mari, Second FES Ellie, and Second FES Yo can, as the majority of her kit, save for her LSA, is purely defensive. When you combine this with her stat line, she makes for a very nice sustain option for normal lives, but not something you'd really consider in voltage ranking situations, and is pretty much useless if you're trying to win a healing skill title during SBL. The next card released was Sweet Moment Kasumi, a pure attribute SP type that has become one of the staples in the pure attribute meta strategies. At Limit Break 0, the little gremlin starts off with 6252 base appeal, 3993 base stamina, and 7120 base technique, good for a roughly 36% crit rate. Her tap active is the SP gauge fill, filling the gauge by 8% at skill level 3. Her passive gives her some modicum of flexibility, as it provides an appeal boost to all other pure attribute cards by 4.6% at skill level 3. Her LSA, available for the first 10 times you use your SP gauge per live, provides 6.6% of this card's appeal as voltage to the next SP gauge used. Combined with Second FES Rina and Detective Hanayo, this card is an essential part to the current pure attribute SP gauge cycle meta composition. This composition gets further enhanced by backlining Party Honoka, who gives you a skill activation increase to other pure attribute cards after you use your SP gauge. Depending on the song, voltage competitors can bank on anywhere between 18 and 23 SP gauge uses, which equates to over 5 million voltage if their SP gauge is going off for maximum value every time. I will note that as excited as I am to use this formation, this Kasumi FES card does become relatively pedestrian if you don't have either Second FES Rina or Detective Hanayo at max limit break. The next FES card was Heart Science Rina, an active attribute guard type that, outside of giving Rina Oshis an idolized UR where she doesn't have her board on, is still very average when it comes to how strong her FES card is. At Limit Break 0, Rina starts off with 4516 base appeal, 8165 base stamina, and 4642 base technique. Her tap active is the Stamina Shield, adding 34% of her stamina as a shield at skill level 3. Her passive is decent for sustain cards, providing a stamina boost of 6% to all cards in her strategy at skill level 3. Her live show active is pretty useless, as it gives a heal equal to 30% of her stamina the first 2 times you switch strategies. Look, I really want to like this card, but there are a lot of reasons why it's just a ho-hum card to have if you're not a super huge Rina Oshi. First, it comes in the active attribute, which features both First FES Rico and Second FES Ellie, both of whom have higher base appeal at max limit break. Secondly, both of their kits provide at least some sort of scoring boost. Rico has her LSA, and Ellie has her passive. Third, like most sustain cards, save for Ellie, FES Mari, and Second FES Yo, you'll never really consider putting this card in your center 3 if you need to score via your SP gauge, as her appeal and technique are both worse than the other 2 active attribute sustain FES cards I mentioned. A cute card, but nothing I'd get overly excited to pull unless I'm a Rina Oshi. The last 2 cards both came as the last FES banner from the first cycle, so we'll start with the featured card, Soulmate Ayumu, who made her appearance as a cool attribute SK type. At Limit Break 0, Ayumi Pyonpyon's in with 6430 base appeal, 3649 base stamina, and 7298 base technique, good for a roughly 36% crit rate. Her tap active is the voltage boost, adding 31% of this card's appeal as voltage at skill level 3. Passive is on the weaker side, providing a 4.6% appeal boost to all other Niji cards at skill level 3. Her live show active provides a guaranteed stamina heal of 7.5% of her technique at the start of every appeal chance. This Ayumu UR is in a very awkward place. Her tap active is based off of her appeal, yet her LSA is based off of her technique, which happens to be her highest stat. Also, her tap active is actually weaker than every other FES card that shares the skill, as she only maxes out at a 37% voltage boost, where FES Setsuna, first FES Karin, second FES Kasumi, and second FES Rina all max out at 42% at max skill level. Ayumu is actually a really good center 3 card for cool songs, but the fact that she's an SK type means that if you do decide to use her as a frontline scorer, her formational penalty means that she'll actually decrease the voltage output of the strategy by 5%, which isn't exactly optimal if you're trying to score well. A very situational card in the meta, but a perfectly fine addition to your collection if you're not concerned too much with the voltage meta. The last card we'll go over in this video is Jade Colored Reverberation Shioriko, a Smile Attribute Voltage type card. At Limit Break 0, Shioriko starts with 7464 base appeal, 3125 base stamina, and 6774 base technique. Her tap active gives all Niji cards a voltage gain of 10.4% for the next 3 nodes at skill level 3. Her passive gives all Niji cards a 4.6% appeal buff at skill level 3. Her LSA, which is the weakest part of her kit, adds 10.5% of this card's appeal as voltage every time you clear an appeal chance. This card's viability, because of its abilities, heavily depends on what difficulty song you're using it for. If you're playing an Expert or Advanced Plus difficulty song, this card is fantastic, as its high appeal and nearly equal technique value at max limit break means that not only will you be tapping for a good score, but whenever you use your SP gauge, those values will be pretty darn high as well. The shortcomings of her tap active and passive don't go unnoticed, however, as one of her better scoring strategies involves pairing this card with Moonrabbit Shizuku and Mononoke Rina on songs like Tokimeki Runners Advance Plus or Love You My Friends Advance Plus. Her biggest problem for regular advanced difficulty songs is that, much like Fesio and Fes Chica, even though she has a very high appeal value and will be consistently tapping for max value, there is no way for her to provide additional scoring, something that Fes Karin and Fes Setsuna can do. A very nice card to own, but as players get higher into the voltage meta competitions, becomes exceedingly situational. That concludes this video going over the first set of Niji FES cards. Hopefully, if you're a newer player, this card analysis gives you a better idea on what each of these cards does and its relevance to the game overall. As always, a big thank you to Xifrid for help with all of the cool visual assets for the video. I've been I Am the Shaz, take it easy, be nice to each other, and I'll see you all next time.